Dun, dun.
Throughout his career, Stefan Montrose has continually shone a light on the system's indifference to its most vulnerable citizens. Tuesday afternoon, the system struck back.
We know what the columns are saying, Miss Jameson. We intend to prove that Dr. Montrose is guilty as charged.
Manslaughter with gross negligence?
In addition to one count of falsification of records with intent to deceive.
I'm afraid you won't get the chance to present those records in court. I'm filing a motion to suppress.
Oh.
Paperwork went through the day before the subpoena was served. Good Shepherd is no longer run by the Archdiocese of New York. It's now an entirely private agency, administered through Dr. Montrose's holding company, New Directions.
So you propose to throw out the evidence because we put the wrong address on the subpoena? Of all the underhanded ploys.
The argument is technically correct. Improper service of a subpoena invalidates admissibility. The court finds for the motion.
Fine. We'll proceed without it.
Dr. Montrose, we've heard in graphic detail about the final days of Aaron Bauer. It's natural to feel pity and perhaps even outrage over the manner in which he died. So tell the court, are you in fact guilty of gross negligence?
No, I am not.
Let me read you a quote.
Ah là 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 là, coup dur pour
Neglect is
Jérôme.
built into our current welfare system.
Guillaume.
The client is a mere asset to be kept or traded as it benefits the agency.
You're reading to me from my own book, The Empty High Chair, published last spring. My agency is different.
Vous avez le code
Indeed,
promo
Good Shepherd
enculé
is distinguished
pour le
for
livre.
treating its clients with dignity, as individuals with needs. Isn't that right?
Qu'est-ce qu'elle a dit?
Objection! Withdrawn.
Were you personally involved in the
Mince.
case of Aaron Bauer?
I involve myself personally in every one of my cases, and this was especially true with respect to Aaron.
How so?
When the Bowers first came to my attention, Aaron had been taken into state custody and shut away inside City Youth Home.
Ah, c'est bien.
I know that institution well. I spent my own formative years there. Nobody deserves to go to City Youth Home. Nobody.
And yet, despite your personal involvement in this case, Aaron Bauer was killed. How do you explain this?
One word: drugs. First it was the crack epidemic. Now, just as that's beginning to subside, an even worse plague is sweeping through New York. It's a plague that destroys mostly those on the margins, so it's easy for the rest of us to ignore.
Do you have some ideas for addressing this problem?
Objection! Assuming facts not in evidence.
Objection overruled.
Jenna Bauer lapsed back
Moi, je suis en train de
into
me faire,
addiction, unbeknownst to you, although
coup
your
dur pour les gens
caseworker
français.
visited her as recently as Christmas Day.
I'm afraid that's correct. In spite of our vigilance, in spite of intensive therapy, the siren call of crystal meth proved too much for her. And once she began using again, she quickly became a danger to her son.
How did she manage to pull the wool over your eyes?
It's one of the most insidious aspects of the syndrome. I've seen it many times. The addict puts up a false front of normalcy, a front that can fool even a trained observer.
Objection. No expert standing.
Your Honor, Dr. Montrose is director of a licensed welfare agency. He holds a PhD in social work from Cornell. He is eminently qualified to comment on the behavior of addicts.
Agreed. Objection overruled.
One last question. Has this tragedy caused you to re-examine your practice?
Naturally,
Il était à
we're
Cornell
thoroughly
quand on dit.
reviewing our procedures. We exist to serve our clients. The death of one impoverishes us all.
Of course. Thank you, Dr. Montrose. Your witness, Mr. McCoy.
Ah là 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 là. Coup dur pour le joueur français. Je peux les laisser faire, hein.
Dr. Montrose, we've heard in graphic detail about the final days of Aaron Bauer. It's natural to feel pity and perhaps even outrage over the manner in which he
First
died.
try.
So tell the court, are you in fact guilty of gross negligence?
No, I am not.
Let me read you a quote. Neglect is built into our current welfare system. The client is a mere asset to be kept or traded as it benefits the agency.
Ah, you're reading to me from my own book, The Empty High Chair, published last spring. My agency is different.
Indeed, Good Shepherd is distinguished for treating its clients with dignity, as individuals with needs. Isn't that right?
Objection. Leading. Defense is giving a speech for her client.
Sustained. Let's concentrate on the facts of this case, shall we?
Were you personally involved in the case of Aaron Bauer?
I involve myself personally in every one of my cases, and this was especially true with respect to Aaron.
How so?
When the Bauers first came to my attention, Aaron had been taken into state custody and shut away inside City Youth Home. I know that institution well. I spent my own formative years there. Nobody deserves to go to City Youth Home. Nobody.
And yet, despite your personal involvement in this case, Aaron Bauer was killed. How do you explain this?
One word: drugs. First it was the crack epidemic. Now, just as that's beginning to subside, an even worse plague is sweeping through New York. It's a plague that destroys mostly those on the margins, so it's easy for the rest of us to ignore.
Do you have some ideas for addressing this problem?
Objection. Immaterial. The defendant is changing the subject.
Sustained. Please strike that last statement from the testimony. New York City is not on trial here.
Jenna Bauer lapsed back into addiction, unbeknownst to you, although your caseworker visited her as recently as Christmas Day.
I'm afraid that's correct. In spite of our vigilance, in spite of intensive therapy, the siren call of crystal meth proved too much for her. And once she began using again, she quickly became a danger to her son.
How did she manage to pull the wool over your eyes?
It's one of the most insidious aspects of the syndrome. I've seen it many times. The addict puts up a false front of normalcy, a front that can fool even a trained observer.
Objection.
C'est non pertinent. C'est pas un témoignage d'opinion puisque elle m'a dit ouais machin il est agréé tout ça. Je retire mon objection. Non, c'est pas
Immaterial.
Objection overruled.
One last question. Has this tragedy caused you to re-examine your practice?
Naturally, we're thoroughly reviewing our procedures. We exist to serve our clients. The death of one impoverished...
Of course. Thank
First try encore, hein.
Dr. Montrose, let me read you a quote.
You...
Objection! Leading. Defense is giving a speech for her client.
Sustained. Let's concentrate on the facts of...
Were you personally involved in...
I involved
How so?
when the...
And yet...
One word. Drug.
Objection. Imitate.
Sustained.
Jenna Bauer lap...
I'm afraid that...
How...
It's one of the most insidious aspects.
One last question. Has this tragedy caused you to re-examine your practice?
Naturally, we're thoroughly reviewing our procedures. We exist to serve our clients. The death of one impoverishes us all.
Of course. Thank you, Dr. Montrose. Your witness, Mr. McCoy.
First try.
Dr. Montrose. State guidelines for social welfare agencies mandate one home visit per month at the very least.
You needn't lecture me. I'm well acquainted with state guidelines.
Do you follow them?
Yes, Mr. McCoy. We follow the state guidelines meticulously.
Good Shepherd didn't have its own guidelines?
No.
Drogué. Il prétend être seulement là pour veiller et respecter un... Mais il cherche un prétexte pour entendre... Pas faire tomber l'ange. Attendez, je suis... La frustration. Ah, c'est... dur pour Jérôme, hein. Montrose s'est presque vanté d'ignorer la procédure. C'est soit ça, soit ça. Écoute, inspecteur, centre pour. Les autres centres. Non, non, non. Il est largué sur la cliente la nouvelle la plus épouvantable, au lieu de respecter sa peine, vous faites tuer. Garçon, je. procédure, il faut le dossier, vous aurez dû me prévenir, inspecteur, la procédure. Une note de service. Il n'y a pas de note de service. Putain.
When did your caseworker last visit the Bowers?
She filed a visitation report.
About that report, did you notice any
Objection. Prosecution is attempting to solicit testimony about a piece of evidence that has been ruled inadmissible.
Objection sustained. You should know better, Mr.
What was he thinking?
You've heard Detective Curtis's account of what he found in Jenna Bauer's apartment, and you've seen...
Indeed, I have.
On va volontairement répondre de la merde. Commencer.
Your agency advocated,
Considering his fate,
at the time,
we weighed the pros and cons of Jenna Bauer's.
Prosecution.
Dr. Montrose. State guidelines for social welfare.
You needn't.
Do you
Yes.
good shepherd?
No.
Alors qu'est-ce que j'ai mis juste avant? Je sais plus. J'ai mis ça ou ça? Regardez le replay. Ah, donc il a déclaré que... Donc je pense que... il suit ses propres normes.
Didn't you tell the detectives that Good Shepherd makes its own guidelines?
I don't recall saying anything of the sort.
Think back, Dr. Montrose. It was during the same interview in which you refused to turn over Aaron Bauer's case files, in clear violation of standard procedure.
Objection, immaterial.
It goes to credibility, Your Honor.
Overruled.
I won't deny that our agency operates according to unique procedures, but if anything, our guidelines are more comprehensive than the state's.
You've heard Detective Curtis's account of what he found in Jenna Bauer's apartment, and you've seen the pictures.
Indeed, I have. What can I say? Appalling. I had no idea until this very morning when my counsel showed me the pictures.
Joli travail, maître.
We know your
on se
caseworker,
reprend.
Ms. Schuyler, briefed you after Mrs. Bauer's body was discovered.
Well, yes, of course, but it takes a picture to really communicate the situation.
Your agency advocated for Jenna Bauer in her bid to regain custody of her son, Aaron. In retrospect, was this in Aaron's best interest?
Considering his fate, the answer has to be no. But hindsight is always 20/20.
At the time, you believed the opposite to be self-evident, right? Every mother deserves to retain the custody of her children?
We weighed the pros and cons of Jenna Bauer's case, and we came to the conclusion that she deserved a second chance. Perhaps if we'd had more facts at our disposal, we would have agreed with the city's decision.
Non, t'avais le dossier.
In this case, the alternative was placing Aaron in City Youth Home. You simply didn't want him there. Dr. Montrose, have you ever signed off on moving a child from his parents' custody into the institutional foster care system?
No.
You're the expert, Dr. Montrose. Do you think it's possible for conditions to degenerate that rapidly in a mere 8 days?
It's possible, I suppose. But I have to admit, if I were an outside observer, I'd find it a difficult story to swallow. Indeed, if it weren't for my faith in my employer, Miss Schuyler, I'd be inclined to think it was a story.
Really? No further questions, Your Honor.
Là, ils vont venir négocier, je pense. Ah non.
Defense calls Wanda Schuyler to the witness stand. I know this is difficult for you, Miss Schuyler, but I want you to recall for us the moment you stepped into Jenna Bauer's apartment on January 1st.
It was like stepping off a cliff, you know?
Because of your feelings for Mrs. Bauer, you mean? Because you cared about her so much?
Objection! Leading?
Sustained.
Would you say you had a personal connection with Erin Bauer?
Leading, pas feeling.
Yes, I did. Aaron, he was a great kid. Talented, you know.
Merci,
He wanted to be a comic book artist when he grew up.
assistant Toto.
He and I had a little private game where
Substitut
he
Toto.
pretended I was a superhero.
But he didn't say or do anything in the last few months to indicate his home life was deteriorating?
No, you know how boys can be at his age? Stoic. He probably thought it would be unmanly or disloyal to tattle on his mom.
Objection!
Témoignage d'opinion.
No expert standing.
Overruled.
How long have you been employed with Good Shepherd, Miss Schuyler?
It'll be 3 years in April.
And in that time, has Dr. Montrose ever encouraged you to be negligent in your duties?
Not at all, no. Dr. Montrose is an inspiration.
Courbe
He
bambouse
knows
LED.
firsthand how broken the system is, and he's completely passionate about reforming it. It's energizing. I only wish... I just wish this hadn't happened to him. I mean, to all of us.
Of course. We all do. Your witness.
On va me laisser emmerder.
Defense calls... I know this is difficult for you, Miss Schuyler, but I want you to recall for us the moment you stepped into Jenna Bauer's apartment.
It was...
Because of your feelings for Miss...
Objection! Leading?
Sustained.
Would you say you had a personal connection with Erin Bauer?
Yes, I did. Aaron, he was a great kid. Talented, you know. He wanted to be a comic book artist when he grew up. He and I had a little private game where he pretended I was a superhero.
But he didn't say or do anything in the last few months to indicate his home life was deteriorating?
No, you know how boys can be at his age? Stoic. He probably thought it would be unmanly or disloyal to tattle on his mom.
Non mais en plus comme elle s'appelle Wanda Wanda Skyler. Wonder Woman.
Objection!
Ah ouais, chez Kata et Associates, par contre, du coup, j'ai une... j'ai pas dû mettre d'objection.
The witness is speculating about the victim's motivations.
Sustained. Please confine yourself to your own impressions.
How long have you been employed with Good Shepherd, Miss Schuyler?
It'll be 3 years in April.
And in that time, has Dr. Montrose ever encouraged you to be negligent in your duties?
Not at all, no. Dr. Montrose is an inspiration. He knows firsthand how broken the system is, and he's completely passionate about reforming it. It's energizing. I only wish... I just wish this hadn't happened to him. I mean, to all of us.
Of course. We all do. Your witness.
First try. Objection communiste révolutionnaire.
Miss Schuyler, Dr. Montrose has testified that you visited the Bowers in their apartment on Christmas Day. At that time, did you find any indications that Jenna Bauer had lapsed back into her addiction to crystal meth?
I didn't see any... I never made that visit.
Oh!
I don't have an excuse. I
Oh, mon
simply
Dieu.
failed to do my job, and then I faked the report after the fact to cover up. I'm sorry, Dr. Montrose.
Oh, shocking.
That's not what you said at the deposition. Are you changing your testimony, Miss Schuyler?
I guess so.
Were you briefed about this? Your Honor, prosecution was unprepared for this development. We petitioned the court for a continuance.
Petition granted. We will resume trial next week.
Oh. Rien ne va plus dans cette affaire, le jury ne sait pas comment interpréter le témoignage de Wanda Skyler. Pour le tourner à votre avantage, vous allez devoir convaincre le témoin de changer de camp. Oh là 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 là.
I've been at the bar 30 years, Miss Jameson, but I don't think I've ever witnessed such a
30 ans.
blatantly
30 ans de
unethical
métier, j'avais vu
maneuver.
ça.
Instructing a witness to change her testimony without altering the deposition.
You have no grounds for accusing me of complicity.
You'd better hope I don't find any. Now, why are
Il est pas
you
content, McCoy,
protecting Dr. Montrose?
Don't let yourself be intimidated, Miss Schuyler. You don't have to answer anything.
No, but you do have to go to jail if you're found guilty of falsifying documents.
We need you to come clean. Please.
Oh putain, continue comme ça, tu vas l'avoir ta rouste. Viens par là, tu vas essayer de siège éjectable, tu vas t'écraser comme une vieille merde contre le plafond, espèce de petit salopard.
Ah, je suis désolé, j'ai pas fait exprès.
Genre, tu tentes tout à la dérision, t'as respect pour rien, continue, moi je vais te le foutre dans le cul, ton gadget, là, espèce de petit salopard.
If you're telling the truth about forging that report, then you must have lied when you said you cared about Aaron.
That's not true. I did care. We had a bond.
On va lui montrer le dessin de Wonder Woman.
Why would you neglect your duties towards someone you care about?
You mentioned on the stand something about a private game between you and Aaron.
It was just a silly joke. It didn't mean anything.
It did to him, I think.
You were his hero, but you failed.
You have to understand.
Wanda, be quiet.
I can't. You know I believe in Dr. Montrose, but I just can't. You'd better go.
I represent you.
Not anymore.
Ouh.
Now, what's the real story?
Putain, que de suspense.
Miss Schuyler, I hold here your personal copy of a visitation report dated December 25th, signed by you and Dr. Montrose. Did you write this report?
No,
Who did?
Dr. Montrose.
But this is your signature.
Yes.
Pourquoi j'ai plus que ça là? Allez hop, je suis italien en 45, je change de camp. Je suis pas sûr qu'être italien c'était bien aussi. Mussolini il était pas très
When did you sign this document?
January 2nd.
The day after you discovered Aaron Bauer was dead.
Uh-huh.
If you didn't write this report, why did you put your name on it?
He said, Dr. Montrose told me the city wanted to use the Bauer tragedy as a pretext for legal action, taking over the agency. Putting my name on that document was the only way to save it.
Oh, ça concorde comme Air France. Blague aviation, oui. Talent.
When did you last visit Jenna and Aaron Bauer?
Last spring? 8 months ago.
J'en peux plus là. Putain, mais la question, Quelle heure est-il? Oui, non. Oh là là là,
Just after Dr. Montrose's book was published.
Yes, that's when things started getting really crazy for all of us. We were flooded with new clients. There was no way we could keep up with them. And then one day, Dr. Montrose called us into his office and told us about his new early graduation program.
Oh là 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 là.
Tell us about Dr. Montrose's early graduation
Oh là,
program.
la répression des fraudes.
He said he determined that a number of our clients no longer needed our services.
According to state guidelines.
No, according to his own guidelines. He called them his early graduates. He mailed each of them a certificate and a one-time payment of $1,000 in exchange for...
In exchange for them keeping quiet.
Yes.
Your witness.
1000 balles.
We
Pas
need to
cher.
talk.
Oh, il faut qu'on parle.
Ready to cut a deal?
My fate is immaterial, Mr. McCoy. My sole concern is to keep the reform movement from falling apart.
Very noble. What are you proposing?
Dr. Montrose pleads to negligence and serves a 12-month probation. He agrees to step aside and allow an acting director to run Good Shepherd for the length of the term.
Oh, what an example of self-sacrifice that is. I've got a better idea, Dr. Montrose.
Quelle idée, docteur.
Looks like we're fighting this one to the end. See you in court, McCoy.
No deal.
Welcome back to the stand, Dr. Montrose. Perhaps this time we can get to the truth. Wanda Schuyler has made some remarkable assertions. Would you care to revise any of your previous statements in the light of her testimony?
Well, clearly I was mistaken in claiming that Good Shepherd did everything it could to avert this tragedy. The caseworker assigned to the Bowers was negligent. Criminally negligent.
Were you aware of her negligence? Did you in fact order her to stop making home visits?
Self-serving lies. I'm guilty of trusting in her professionalism, nothing else.
Oh oui.
I'm a very busy man, Mr. McCoy. I don't get personally involved in every case.
Et oui, j'ai écouté. Je suis
Allow me
attentif.
to read from the transcript. Counsel for the defense, were you personally involved in the case of Aaron Bauer? Defendant, I involve myself personally in every one of my cases.
Well, yes, I said that, but there's only so much of me to go around.
Wanda Schuyler mentioned an early graduation program. Dr. Montrose, did you issue payouts to your clients, then drop them from your active client list without ever informing Child Protective Services?
Of course not. That's a complete fabrication.
Et oui, on a la facture. Détective No Deal 4. Oh, putain, oui, j'avais oublié lui.
Your Honor, I would like to submit People's Exhibit D into evidence. A receipt for a $1,000 check issued to Jenna Bauer by the defendant's holding company, New Directions.
Objection. Immaterial. New Directions is a completely different and unconnected corporate entity. If they issued a check to Jenna Bauer, that has no bearing on Dr. Montrose's culpability.
Oui, mais je peux quand même réfuter. Le lien est clair.
Hardly immaterial, Your Honor.
Oui.
Agreed. Objection overruled.
So, did you send Mrs. Bauer a $1,000 check last April, Dr. Montrose? Or is that also a complete fabrication?
I may have done so.
You don't remember?
I believe I did.
What prompted you? Charity?
Of course. The Bowers were very poor. They needed help.
Yes, they did. But you gave them cash.
On arrive à la fin, j'espère.
Dr. Montrose has devoted his life to helping those who have been failed by the system. But some, sadly, are beyond help. And sometimes a good agency can be undone by the actions of one dishonest employee. If Wanda Schuyler hadn't failed to discharge her duties and then compounded her failure with lies, might Good Shepherd have been able to save Jenna and Aaron Bauer? We'll never know. It's a bitter irony that a champion of reform should fail to spot the corruption among his own staff. He can be faulted, perhaps, for being too trusting, too optimistic about human nature. Surely this is no crime. But if my client is convicted of these charges, if he's sent to jail and his reform movement is crushed by the powers that be, it will be more than a crime. It will be an outrage.
How dare you? La conclusion.
Dr. Montrose made his name arguing that our welfare system treats his clients like numbers. He proposed to treat them with dignity as individuals. His message resonated with millions, and he became famous. But the demands of celebrity caused him to neglect his own principles. In the end, his own clients were reduced to numbers. Numbers on checks. Children belong with their parents. This is a sentiment that resonates with us, and we can be grateful that Dr. Montrose's advocacy has helped push our welfare system to take the claims of parents more seriously. But not every individual case conforms to the ideal. In the case of Jenna and Aaron Bauer, the defendant's ideals blinded him to the realities of the case and led him to make a serious error. The deaths of Aaron and Jenna Bauer left Dr. Montrose with a terrible decision to make. He could acknowledge his agency's mistake, but this would compromise his moral authority as a public advocate. Or he could cover up the evidence of his neglect and perhaps preserve his reputation at the expense of his integrity. Dr. Montrose chose the less noble expedient. What causes people to commit crimes of gross negligence? I've run across many motives in my day: resentment, greed, indifference, callousness. Dr. Montrose is motivated to make the world a better place. His good intentions, it seems, have blinded him to the evil he has perpetrated. That's what makes him a tragic figure and a dangerous one. And that's why it's so imperative that justice be done.
Have you reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor. In the case of gross negligence, we find the defendant, Stephen Montrose, guilty as charged. In the case of manslaughter...
Another victory for truth and justice.
Is it? Good Shepherd will go into receivership, and before long
allez,
it'll be
en tôle.
just another child welfare agency.
Montrose was a fraud, Jack. He
Legacies.
got what he deserves.
But does his movement deserve to die? How many parents are going to lose their kids as a result of this decision?
Hey, it's not our job to second guess. Our job is to call them as we seize them, and trust that it'll all work out in the end. Come on, let's get a drink.
Tu vas voir, Docteur Montrose, tu vas avoir les couilles.
Alice, you look great.
I feel great. I've even been running again. Where's Detective Curtis?
His daughter's birthday tonight. So, I'm guessing your recovery is going better than the last time we talked.
Last time we talked, I was in a coma. I've been seeing a hypnotherapist, of all things.
Anything jog your memory? Sorry, I was terrible.
Wow, super.
No, I do remember running with Harrison. The orange overhead lamps and the trees. But that's it. Nothing after. I'm sorry.
Don't be. Trauma like this, there's often memory loss.
I still miss him, though. Harrison's family's been great. His father's been taking care of all the bills. And, of course, he's pleased as punch about his new grandson. We're calling him Brendan.
Good. We sort of wondered if this surprise grandbaby might be a problem.
Not at all. So we weren't married. So we were in high school. Things like this teach you. That stuff doesn't matter. Grandpa Bedford loves that boy to death.
Any more thoughts on who would have wanted to kill Harrison?
No, everyone loved him. You really think someone targeted him? In the papers, they just call it a thrill kill.
Yeah, don't believe everything you read.
Well, thanks for everything, Detective.
Pour toi,
I'm sorry I can't help more.
Take care, Allison.
Et voilà, c'était le TellTaleTuesday comme tous les mardis. First try évidemment.